guys, it's Alex, and I'm here with this week's top 5 video, which is my top 5 favorite rereads. I am someone who does like to reread my old favorite books a lot. I haven't been rereading as much lately, apart from audiobooks, but I decided I'd come up with a list of some of my most beloved rereads that each of these books I think I've read at least 3 or 4 times. The first book on this list is Alanna, the First Adventure by Tamora Pierce. This is the first Tamora Pierce book that I ever read. It was the first one that I received, and it's also the first one that she ever wrote. This is from the 80s, and I received this book when I was in middle school and absolutely fell in love with Alanna and with the world of Tortall. Honestly, any of the books set in the Tortall universe could be on this list, but I chose Alanna just because this was my introduction, and this is the one I always start with when I go back to them. It's a young adult fantasy series, and I absolutely love each and every single one of the books in this universe. Next is a young adult contemporary novel that I've read probably the most out of any book I've ever read, and that is The Truth About Forever by Sarah Dessen. This is a sweet, cutesy romance novel that makes me so happy. I don't read a lot of just straight, cutesy romance books, and there's really nothing upsetting in this book at all. It's just a good time and so heartwarming, and it's one of those books that I read as a teenager, and just whenever I was in a bad mood or needed something to lift me up a little bit, this was the book I returned to. Macy and Wes and their romance are just such a happy time. I don't know how to describe this book other than utterly heartwarming. It's like returning a home whenever I read this book, and I will probably reread it multiple times in the future. I've been falling out of love with Sarah Dessen a little bit as I've gotten older. I'm no longer the teenager who loves her cutesy books, and I've been finding more problems with her recent releases, but this is one that I'm always going to absolutely adore. Next is a slightly more recent favorite, and that is Long May She Reign by Emerson White. I found this book when I was in high school, probably my junior or senior year. I just picked it up randomly from Barnes & Noble, and I fell in love. This book is so well written. Ellen Emerson White's writing style is absolutely fantastic, and her characters are dry and funny and so incredibly intelligent. Everything about this book is just really intelligent, and it's not hard to follow, but it is kind of a slow read for that reason. You have to think about what she's saying and what the characters are doing, and I love that. Meg is the President's Daughter, and this is the 4th book in a series, of which this is the only one I own so far. But I love this world. I love Meg, and I've read this book multiple times, even though it's almost 800 pages long, and I feel like that says a lot. I never see anyone talking about this book on BookTube. I've never seen anyone mention it ever, and that really disappoints me because this is one of my favorite books of all time, and it deserves so much more recognition than it gets. Next is not so much a specific book, but an author, and that is Margaret Atwood. I find that it's not so much that I enjoy reading Margaret Atwood books a second time, although I very much do, but it's rather out of necessity. Margaret Atwood's writing style is very dense and very difficult to get through, and that's not to say it's bad. Her prose is just very difficult to read. I thoroughly enjoy it though. But that means that the first time I read any of her books, I'm focused very much on what she's saying and what's happening in the story, so that sometimes I do kind of miss what she means and the underlying meanings of the story. The second time I read them, I do have a better general idea of the story itself, so that I can focus more on the meanings and what's important. I find that the second time I read her books, I have a much better appreciation. I've done this twice so far with The Handmaid's Tale and Alias Grace, and it's worked well for both of them, so I plan to do that with probably every Margaret Atwood book that I read. And the final book on this list I don't think will surprise anyone. It had to be on this list, even though I do try to leave it off most of my top 5 lists just so I don't get repetitive, and that is a Harry Potter. I had to include this on this list. There was a time in my life where I reread the entire Harry Potter series every single year. I read it in a week. We would go to the beach for 7 days, and I would take all 7 of the Harry Potter books and read them all in a week. The trick is not to read a book a day because the first books are very short, so you need to read the first 2 or 3 in the first day, so that by the time you get to the 5th one, you have some extra time. I love Harry Potter. Harry Potter is my childhood. I don't think critically about this book. I don't think I ever will, nor do I really want to. This is just pure nostalgia for me, and every time I reread this series, it makes me happy, and it never fails to surprise me with the number of times I've read this book. Every time I reread it, I figure out something new. I learn a new detail or a new fact about a character, and it just feels like the experience of reading Harry Potter never truly ends. Those are my top 5 favorite rereads. Please share down below what some of your favorite books to reread are, because I am a huge fan of rereading all my old favorites. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.